All right, welcome everybody. This is Brian Hartman, and I am the president of Pharus Funding Partners and partners in Pharus Global, where you can find us at pharusglobal.com, where we help businesses, what we like to say, from the cradle all the way to the exit strategy. We're located here at 1859 Port St. Lucie Boulevard, the southeast Port St. Lucie Boulevard. You can find us at Ferris Plaza. So you'll see us while you go east or west, going up and down Port St. Lucie Boulevard. Stop by and say hi, beep the horn. I could hear you. And we're happy to have some coffee and sit down and chat. So we can help with any aspect. We hate to use the terminology. We're one-stop shop, but in essence, that's what we can do. Today is episode number 24 of Live at 5, and we are going to be talking about 7 ways or 7 steps to boost your credit score. So yes, you have me for the next, 20 to 30 minutes, if it takes that long, and happy to go through some of the misconceptions people have about their credit scores and credit repair in general. So with that said, let's jump right in. I am going to share my screen here. Let's see if we can make this happen. All right, so most people are familiar with the fact that credit scores can range from 300 to as much as 850. And what a lot of people aren't aware of is the 5 key areas or factors that go into the scoring model that makes up that score. So there's a differential of 550 points, right? From 300 to 850. So the worst off you can be is 300. Everything over that can be up or down by an additional 550 points. And the 5 categories that make up that 850, I'm going to see if I can make this a little bit bigger. First and foremost is paying your bills on time. A lot of us, have some struggles with that. I would highly recommend that you get as many bills as you can on auto pay so you don't have to worry about them being paid on time. But that's a huge 35% out of that 550 points. That's the differential in your score. So that can go up to 192.5 points added to the 300. Right there, you would be at 492.5 if you just simply pay your bills on time. Imagine that. Next up is 30% depends on your credit card utilization. Everybody has them. Most people tend to overuse them. And what I like to say is use them and pay them down as quickly as possible. If the reporting date on your credit cards comes before you pay it down, then it's going to show higher utilization on your credit report and lower your score. So what you want to try to do is make sure that your credit balance is 30% or less of your limit, and that will help you get as much of this 165 points added to your 300. Make sense? Sounds simple? It's not that simple, but just try to remember 30% utilization. Use 30% or less of the limit of your credit cards at all times when it reports to the credit bureaus. Next up is the how long you've had credit, the length of your credit history. So a lot of people remember Sears cards and JCPenney cards from like the 80s, store cards, right? That's how you began to establish credit. Well, good news there is if you still have your JCPenney card, now you have 40 years just about of credit card history to be able to go towards your 82.5 points. So the longer you have credit, the higher that portion of the credit amount of points that you get will be. So hang on to your credit for as long as you can. Try to stay away from starting new credit as often as you can as well. The new credit is going to lower your score because it takes time for it to season or get old. Hope that makes sense. And then the next option that we talk about is types of credit. So your credit mix is 10% of your score. So credit mix means types of credit like car loans is a loan. Credit cards is revolving credit. Two different types of credit, right? You could have a mortgage. That's a third type of credit. So ideal situation, mortgage, car loan, 3 to 5 credit cards that you currently own. That's the ideal credit mix. If you don't own a home, that's okay. Car loan is good. Personal term loan is good. Something that's other than a credit card will help create the mix that you need for your score so you can get as much of that 55 points as possible to add to your credit score. And then the last piece, I mentioned it already, new credit makes up 10% of your 550 points. So another 55 points goes towards new credit that you build. So the least amount that you want to worry about is new credit, right? The maximum points you want to concentrate on is your payment history. So you can see the swing there. Total is 550 points. And if you have all of this in line, in a perfect world, you could have an 850 credit score. So with that being said, we kind of went over it. I'll mention it again. 35% of your score is looking at how you have paid for your past credit accounts and if you're making them on time. That's a huge chunk, right? Next, amount owed. So on your credit cards, what are the balances you owe compared to your limits? And that's going to determine another 30% of your credit score. Next is length of credit history, how long you have it. And then it's kind of a toss-up between new credit and types of credit. We talked about the types of credit, loans versus revolving credit cards or mortgages. 3 different types of credit. New credit, you go out and get a new credit card, you go out and get a new car loan, that counts towards this piece, which is new credit. So I can quickly show you, and by the way, for anybody that is watching out there, whether you're on LinkedIn or Facebook or YouTube, drop a line to say hi in the comments, or if you have any questions while we're going through this, feel free to also put those questions into the comments, and I'll be happy to answer anything as they come in. And you know, we'll do that as we go along. So happy to answer any questions. All right. So I wanted to show you real quick what a typical client can look like, because everybody asks the same question. How long is it going to take to have credit repair done on my account? And my standard answer is, that depends. I know everybody loves that answer, depends, but credit repair can take as long as it takes to be able to get you into the position that you want to be credit score wise to take care of what your goals are. So if your goal is to, let's say, buy a house, and you started with credit scores like this, that's what we call yuck. That's what we call credit scores that are just a mess, right? 550, 517. Remember, the lowest credit score you can get is 300. So obviously this is on the not so good side. So how long is it going to take you to get into a position where you can actually apply and get approved for a mortgage? Very good question. Typically, the minimum credit score you want to be at is 640. Ideal credit score to get the best interest rates, 740 or more. So it depends on what your tolerance is and what your time frame is, right? In this particular case, this customer had 15 derogatory items on their credit report. And you can see them listed here. There were 7 with Equifax, 4 with Experian, 4 with TransUnion, right? No public records, so there was no bankruptcies, there was no judgments, no repos, just your standard collections, charge-offs, things like that. So we started, and in roughly about 6 months' time, and typically I tell people you'll see a tremendous difference in about 4 to 6 months on your credit score from the beginning when you start having credit repair done. So in this particular case, it took 6 months to get to 670, 683, and 698 from these scores. So 6 months time, we increased scores by about 120 points on each credit bureau by doing credit repair. Now, when this client reached this point, could he have gotten a mortgage? Absolutely. But he didn't want to stop there. He wanted to get the best interest rate possible, right? So we worked for another 2 months hard at getting the rest of the information removed from his reports. Lo and behold, now he was over 700, which is going to get him, as you can see here, very good, right? That's going to get him pretty close to what would be the best interest rates on his mortgage. So that took a total of about 8 months. Again, in 6 months, he could have got a mortgage. Might have not been the best interest rate, but wouldn't have been too bad. But that's a heck of a lot better than what his scores were originally. So what I'd like to do at this point is talk to you about what can you do on your own to potentially get this increase in your credit scores, right? So let's start from the beginning, and we'll try to make it quick because I don't want to keep you guys too long. Again, if you have any questions as we go through, feel free to drop them into the comments section. I'm happy to answer all your questions. So we're going to talk about 7 steps to boost your credit score. First one is correct all inaccuracies on your credit report. Can you believe that there's actually inaccuracies on a credit report? Absolutely. Why? Because people are punching in things onto your credit report as they come from the creditors. There's definitely room for incorrect information to be placed on your credit report. So you might have, for example, old addresses that no longer apply to you, or your name may be misspelled, believe it or not, or your social security could be wrong, or your birth date might be wrong. All of those things are methods that we look at to try to get things removed that are inaccurate on your credit report. And these are things that you could be looking for. So go through your credit reports carefully. Look for late payments, charge-offs, collections, or other negative items that aren't yours. There's even stuff that could be on your report that might be somebody else's. What if there's somebody with the same name as you? that got put on there incorrectly by accident. Note that accounts listed as settled, paid derogatory, paid charged off, or anything other than current or paid as agreed if you paid on time and in full. That could be a red flag. Obviously, something is wrong with that. Same goes for any accounts that were included in a bankruptcy but are still listed as unpaid and negative items older than 7 years. Sometimes scores actually go down when bad items fall off of your report. So you have to pay attention and know these things, that even though you might get something removed that you disputed from the bureaus, initially it could end up lowering your score. So what's a good example of that? You may have a credit card that had a couple of late payments, let's say, but you had the card for 20 years. And you might go to dispute it with the bureaus, and if you don't do it properly, you might be disputing to get the late payments removed. Many times the bureaus will remove the entire trade line. That whole credit card with all that history might go away. Remember, we talked about the time that you have the credit is one of the biggest scoring factors. Imagine if a card that you had for 20 years suddenly went away. It's going to make your score drop, even though you got the 2 late payments removed. So hope it's starting to make sense there. Also, make sure you remove any duplicate collection notices listed. I've seen it all the time. People may have a collection, for example, with a cell phone company, and suddenly it gets duplicated and it looks like there's 2 different collection accounts. And if it's across all 3 credit bureaus, now you have 6 collection accounts instead of 3. So you want to pay attention to all of that when you're reviewing your credit reports. So second step to boost your score, make sure that your proper credit lines are posted on your credit reports. So what does that mean? You may have a credit card, for example, with a limit of $5,000. Suddenly, because of a pandemic maybe, credit card company decides to lower your limit from $5,000 to $1,000. Well, what happens if you had a limit, a balance on there of $500? So now you had a $500 balance on a $5,000 card is like 10% utilization, right? What happens if that limit gets dropped to $1,000? Now you have a balance of $500 on a limit of $1,000. That's 50% utilization. Suddenly, your credit score is going to plummet. And yes, credit card companies can do that at the drop of a hat for no rhyme or reason. They may just go ahead and lower your limits. So pay attention to that when you're reviewing your credit report. If you have any negative marks on your credit report, negotiate with the creditor or lender to remove them. So again, you may have a late payment or a couple of late payments on I don't know, we'll just use a Bank of America credit card that you had for 15 years. And you've been a customer all that time. You might have your banking relationship. You might have your business banking relationship with them. It does not hurt to call them and say, I've been a long-time customer. Would you please, as a favor, remove late payments that are causing me to not be able to get approved for a good interest rate on a home mortgage that I'm looking for? And sometimes they will do that for you as a courtesy. Another time that it may come into effect for you is you might have a collection on your credit report. And let's not call it a collection. Let's go back to a couple of late payments on your report, right? What you may want to do as a different option is call up the company and ask if they would remove those late payments or in the event that it happens to be, if it was charged off, an account that you didn't pay on time, you can ask for you negotiate basically and say, I'm willing to pay 20% of the balance that I owe you on that charge off. I know there's late payments on the account, but would you agree if I paid 20% of what's owed to you, and in exchange, delete that from my credit report? If they say yes, then what you want to do is make sure you get it in writing before you do anything. Before you make that payment, get it in writing from the creditor that they are willing to delete that account when you make that 20% payment, and mark it as paid in full. They remove it from your report. That's one less negative item on your report. That will help increase your score. So number 4 out of 7, pay all credit cards and any revolving credit down to below 30% of the available credit line. That's what we talked about a little bit earlier. Always, 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 if you can, make sure that your balance on your credit card is 30% or less than your limit, especially when it's going to be reported to the bureau. So you want to try to find out what the report date is of each credit card. And that way you make sure you pay down the balance to less than 30% before it gets reported to the bureaus. It makes a tremendous difference on your score, because the moment that that balance that's more than 30% gets reported to the bureaus, your score drops. So just keep that in mind. Do not close your old credit card accounts. How many times have you heard people say, I've had this credit card, I don't use it, I'm going to call up and close it? Well, it could be that you had that card for 20 years. Maybe it was because the interest rate went up. You decided not to use it anymore. The problem with that is that if you call up and close it, then you lose all of that history, all the time that you had that card. So if you had it 10, 15, 20 years, all that payment history suddenly goes away. Your score is going to drop drastically. Instead, just cut them up. Cut up those cards. Put them in a drawer. If you're not going to use them, just hold on to them. You don't have to close them. The moment that you call up and close that account, your score is going to drop tremendously. Avoid applying for new credit. So, we used to go around and apply for credit cards here, there, and everywhere. You go shopping, you get a store card, to get 10% off. All of that new credit is going to affect your score in a negative fashion. It's going to make it drop. Now, eventually that new credit, if you can avoid it, will become seasoned and it will allow your score to go back up again. But if you have a car loan that you just got recently, chances are your credit score is going to take a little hit temporarily until it starts the season, right? The other thing to keep in mind is if you do have a car loan and you decide to pay it off and you think that that's going to be a successful way to increase your credit score, doesn't always mean that. What happens is, again, that history on that car loan is probably at least 5 years if you're paying it off, or you decided to pay it off early and it's 3 years into a 5-year loan, 3 years of history is going away. So there's, again, a good chance that your credit score is going to drop. Even though you're paid on time and you paid it off, doesn't always work in your favor. So you might want to check on those things before you just go ahead and decide to use your excess funds to pay off a car loan. Maybe it would have been better to pay down credit card limits and balances with it. Last but not least, have at least 3 revolving credit lines and 1 active or paid installment loan on your credit report. So basically that goes back to what we talked about earlier, your credit mix. So important. If all you have is credit cards, for example, and no term loans, no personal loan, no car loan, no mortgage. You could have a much higher score if you are able to get a personal term loan, for example. We can show you how to do that. I also would urge you to, if you do need to do some of these things, if you have negative derogatory items on your credit that you're working towards getting removed, maybe you don't have credit cards right now. That's another thing that I've seen out there. People have mortgages and a term loan for a car, for example, but they have no credit cards. Just by getting a couple of credit cards could increase your score tremendously, because now you have a better mix. We can also show you how to be able to get higher balances, higher limits on credit cards to lower your utilization. And if you can get below that 30% utilization on your cards, that will help increase your score. There's ways to be able to build positive while getting the negative removed from your reports. You always should be doing a little bit of both, positive and negative, to help increase your credit scores. So with that said, I hope that gives you guys a lot of good information that you can take back with you and help increase your credit scores to hopefully get you into that home at a good interest rate, or into that car at a good interest rate and good terms. We are more than happy to do a free credit consultation with you. If you go to pharuscreditsolutions.live/free consultation, you will be taken to an appointment screen. It'll go through some questions so we can learn more about what you're looking to accomplish, and totally free, we'll go through a analysis of your credit to see what you can do to be able to get yourself into a better position. Pete, I see you out there. Thank you. Pete says, great information, very valuable. Thank you. Very welcome, Pete. Appreciate your comments, and thanks for watching. Hope the weather is good out there in Colorado. So it doesn't hurt to get a free consultation. No obligation to move forward with any type of credit repair. We just want to show you what you have on there. You might be surprised at some of the inaccuracies. I'm happy to answer whatever questions you might have, and see to it that we get you as close as possible to the 850 number, so you can be Mr. or Mrs. Perfect Credit in the future too. Frank Lillo out there, great info. I give you a lot of credit. Knee slapper. Thanks, Frank. That's awesome. Thanks for watching. So if anybody has any further questions that they may not have wanted to go through during this broadcast, my contact information is below. It's brian@pharuscreditsolutions.com is my email address. Phone number here is 772-223-3344. Looking forward to getting you in the driver's seat for your credit. If anybody out there would like to appear on our Live at 5, this was episode number 24, you could be number 25. And actually, next week, we will be having Amy Mitchell of her company is called, wait, I'm going to bring it up, Houses of Windsor. She does English tea, and actually business owners that would like to send English tea and crumpets and great gift items to their clients. That's what her business is all about. She'll be on the show next week. Happy to have you guys on. So just reach out to me and let me know. We do this every Tuesday live at 5 here at Pharus Global headquarters. Appreciate everybody watching. Thank you for the comments, you guys, and look forward to seeing you next week. Have a great night.